Hello and welcome to DFS Talk. It is Thursday, October 15th, 2020, and we are here for week 6. I am Andrew Hansen, joined, of course, by Shane Caldwell. And Shane, it's a unique Thursday here in the NFL with games tonight. So we've got all this extra time to do our research and start building our lineups for the main slate on Sunday.
Yeah, that helps us focus on this 11-game slate here. We're crossing our fingers that no other games get canceled or moved around or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, we got a nice slate of games. It looks like we got some defensive battles. I don't see any like really high scoring, like crazy shootout games or really chalky games. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see where the ownership goes and what the most popular games are here.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a little bit of a scare this morning with the Falcons and Vikings game. Looked like with the positive tests in the Falcons organization that perhaps that game would get postponed. But as of now, it looks like it's a full go. It is one of the games with a total over 50. There are 5 of the 11, but it's different 50-point totals than usual, like you said. Not these crazy shootouts that we look at and say, well, this could go into the 60s or even higher. So we are going to grind through each of these matchups and break it down for you. And we'll look at those totals, courtesy of our presenting sponsor here, BetUS.com.pa, a wonderful partner. We love that relationship. So use the promo code CoachTalk when you go to BetUS.com.pa. You get a 125% match on your first deposit, and you can get into some action with these game lines. And Shane, let's look at game number 1 here. This is not one of the higher scoring games. Okay, out of the first 3 games we're going to talk about here, games 2 and 3 are really attractive to me. Game 1 is more of a one-off situation because we've got the Bears traveling to play the Panthers, and the Panthers are home favorites by 1.5. Over-under is only 44.5. Bears coming off that solid victory against Tampa on last Thursday, so they're well rested. 4-1, taking on Carolina 3-2. So with a lower total here, anybody you're looking to play from game 1?
Not a lot of exposure here. They're pretty tough defenses, and both defenses are actually good against the pass. And there's nothing about the passing games for either team that you absolutely love that you just have to get in on. I mean, we were on Carolina last week, but they were playing Atlanta, right? So that was a little more attractive at that point. But Chicago's a tough defense. Carolina's been surprisingly competitive on defense. And it's hard to trust Nick Foles in the Bears passing attack. But I do like the running backs in this game. I mean, the running backs are pretty much, bell cow running backs. And you got Montgomery for the Bears is really cheap in the high $5,000 range on both sites. And he seems like a great value here against Carolina. You can certainly run against them. And
number 25 in the league against the run. Great matchup.
Yeah. Exactly. So it looks like it's going to be a fairly close game, so he shouldn't be game scripted out if he can catch a few passes too. So he looks like a pretty good matchup here. I know Carolina did lose one of their defensive tackles to injury as well. So that could be a good sign for them being able to get some holes for Montgomery. So I do like Montgomery here. They don't really have anyone else for the Bears for running backs anyways. And then Mike Davis has been really good, and they finally priced him up. So it's not as attractive with Mike Davis being that they priced him up and it's a tough matchup against the Bears, but he still can get it done in the passing game, especially probably on Draftkings, just because you've seen his ability to catch, 8 or 9 passes, which is, kind of ridiculous. So if Carolina is able to move the ball and he gets a couple, gets a rushing touchdown and then still gets work in the passing game, he's still probably viable, but it's hard for him to smash the value like he has been. Mike Davis has been the number 1 PPR back for over the last 3 weeks here. So, but his price is coming up, and this is a much tougher matchup when he was going against Atlanta and some of the other weaker teams here. So Mike Davis is someone that I don't think I'm going to be 100% lock and load like I was last week.
Yeah, I hear you. Like you said, tougher matchup, tougher price tag. So I'm much more interested in Montgomery on the Bears side. I haven't played him this year, but he's really become that bell cow. And Patterson is the guy who got 6 touches behind him, but he's more of a gadget player. So I really like how Montgomery got 17 touches last week. He's got the rest. He caught 7 passes, and he's a great price tag. So I like him. I want to mention that Allen Robinson got 16 targets last week. So Foles is definitely looking his way. It's 38% of the targets. But it is a tough pass defense. They're number 4 in terms of yardage. So, yeah, it's all about Montgomery here for me as a one-off. And then I'm going to transition to game 2. So
All right.
let's do that. And you're going to help us with this one because it's Detroit traveling to play the Jaguars. Detroit, the 3-point favorites on BetUS, and it's over under 54.5. So I'm ready to get some fireworks going here. You are the Detroit sports man. You can follow Shane on Twitter at DET Sports Shane. These defenses have not been good, Shane. Detroit allowing 31.8 per game. The Jags allowing 29.4 per game. So which of these matchups are you looking to attack?
Well, I think the Detroit Lions have played some tough teams. You know, they've really got hammered by, for example, Green Bay Packers, and New Orleans Saints. Didn't play well at all. But since Detroit's coming off the bye week and they're well rested and their defense is going to get healthier now, they are in a get right spot here. The schedule is finally getting easier. So even though you look at the Detroit defense and you look at basically they're last in almost every category, and you say let's attack this defense, keep in mind the Jaguars' offensive line and their schemes and their skill players are not as good as like your New Orleans Saints or your Green Bay Packers. So I think that's where you have to be careful here in thinking this is just a smash spot for the Jaguars. So I think the Lions can win this game easily and have a pretty good lead. So in this game, I would attack mostly the passing games for each team, and then also the running game for Detroit. So of course that means I like my guy Stafford. He's been close to having some big games against some tough teams, and this is a great spot for him. And they're pretty much do or die. I mean, they're sitting at 1-3. They have to win this game. They're kind of seeing if they're going to fight for the coach's spot. So I like Stafford here to have a big blow-up game. Jacksonville's really bad on defense. Kenny Golladay will have the benefit of the bye week to get his hamstring healthy and be able to really do well here. Hawkinson is still pretty low priced, and Jaguars are not very good at covering tight ends. And then for the Detroit running game, Adrian Peterson is super cheap, and the Lions have a huge run blocking advantage against this defensive front for the Jaguars. So I look for them to get a lead with Stafford and then pound the ball with Adrian Peterson. And also don't forget about DeAndre Swift over there on DraftKings. He's still way too cheap. And you're going to see every single week DeAndre Swift getting more and more targets, more and more carries, and getting more and more involved in the game. He's way too talented to get the limited production he is, and he's explosive. He's a playmaker. So DeAndre Swift more for GPPs. I actually really like him, where Adrian Peterson is more cash games. So you can certainly stack the Detroit Lions here. Coming back on the other side, James Robinson is a great running back. He's been kind of disappointing. You know, he had a really bad game last week. He fumbled the ball. It didn't look great against Houston, that we thought was a great matchup. And I think that when I listened to all the Lions press clippings this week, they're really focused on stopping the run. So they're really going to load the box against Robinson, and they're going to force Minshew to throw the ball here. So I don't think Robinson's actually going to have a huge game, even though he should be highly owned and it looks like an absolute smash spot. I don't think Robinson's going to be a smash spot here. So I would rather focus on guys like DJ Chark if he's healthy, and Laviska Shenault. I think those guys should have big games. And I probably don't trust Minshew, but I like some of his receiving targets to have a big game here, as they should be down and have to come from behind here. So that's kind of the game script that I see playing out for here. Interesting to see. I think James Robinson should be really highly owned because he's still super cheap and he's a bell cow going against the one of the top matchups against the run. But I actually think the Lions are going to bounce back against the run this week. I know that's hard to believe, but that's what I'm seeing that's going to play out here.
It is a little hard to believe, and I'll chalk that up just a little bit to your local bias. I'm glad, that you're getting those local reports. I think it's important, the game plan, if they stack the box, that could make a difference. But, this is a team that's number 32 in the league against the run. That is dead last. So I love this matchup. I'm going to have Robinson. He's still affordable, under 7,000 on DraftKings. Great consistency with his touches. Last 5 games, 17, 19, 17, 21, and 18. And, it's a similar matchup on the other side. So I agree that it's important to consider the Detroit rushing attack. But you said it. It's a two-headed monster there with Peterson and Swift. Peterson, 2 weeks ago, he got 22 carries. But last game, he only got 11. Swift trending up with his touches. Those guys are both priced accordingly. They're under 5,000 on DraftKings, but I'm going to mostly avoid that backfield and feel pretty good about Robinson getting all the touches. I am with you though on using that Detroit passing game. Jacksonville's number 29 against the pass. So Stafford, certainly one of the finalists to be my quarterback this week. And Golladay, great spot there. Good price. 2 games so far, two touchdowns. Like you said, healed up after the bye week. So I love that combo. And then in terms of the injury news with those Jaguars wide receivers who could get involved, if Detroit does indeed get that lead, right now here on Thursday, Chark and Chenault are a little bit banged up. They're questionable. So we'll track that for you. And then we'll have our next podcast Saturday night with that final injury news where we preview the Sunday slate. We go position by position. So make sure to tune in to that. In fact, if you're on YouTube, do us a favor, smash that like button and then click that subscribe button so you get the alert of when our podcast post. Final stat I want to mention is, what New Orleans did against Detroit with that rushing attack. Kamara and Murray combined for 202 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. So I understand why Detroit wants to stack the box and improve that rushing defense, but they have a long way to go. And even if they improve a little bit, I think Robinson can still be he can still pay off value.
Yeah, but I think it's a huge mistake to compare like the Green Bay running attack and their offensive line and their schemes and the New Orleans Saints running attack, offensive line, their talent schemes against the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. It's a huge difference in the quarterbacks they have, the weapons that they have. It's just a completely different thing here. And I think the Lions are in a better spot here. So I think that the Lions defense is not great, but they're not as bad as being ranked last against the run. I think that they got blown up against 2 really good teams and had 2 really bad games, and that inflated their number to make them look even worse than they are.
Okay.
So, that's kind of where I'm at.
It's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Yeah. Interesting matchups here in Game 3 too. Another total over 50. It's 52.5 as Houston traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Titans will be the 3-point home favorites, undefeated at 4-0. Houston 1-4, but 1-0 under Romeo Crennel. And Tennessee coming in with short rest after that impressive victory against the Bills on Tuesday. But we've got some interesting matchups, like we said, 2 good ones on the ground again, as the Texans are facing the Titans' number 27 rushing defense, and the Titans are facing the Texans' number 31 rushing defense. So are you interested in any of the running backs in this game?
No, Derrick Henry's pretty expensive here. And, it was just odd that they really limited his touches in that game last week here. So, well, technically this week on Tuesday. So they really limited his touches. They did get off to a huge lead and had a lot of turnovers, and it made them win the game very easily. So maybe they just decided to rest Henry, being that they knew they had a short turnaround and that they knew they had a huge lead in the game. So that's what you're hoping for if you're going to pay up for Henry, because he's very expensive. So I think he's probably, I don't know if he's upside in GPPs at that price for Henry. I don't think they're going to get a huge lead in this game like they did against Buffalo. That was a little bit surprising. Actually, I think Houston can actually hang with this team and play pretty good here. So on the Tennessee, I don't know if I'm willing to pay up depending on roster. I like Jonnu Smith. Houston's pretty bad against tight ends, and Jonnu Smith looks like a great athlete out there and a great target. They run some screens for him and get him in space, and he's still pretty cheap. Obviously, he had 2 touchdowns the other night. This pricing's not going to account for that, for him having a pretty big game. And then I love the Houston passing attack. Again, last week we loved them against Jacksonville. This week they're against weak secondary. So I do like the passing attack here. So I like Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller. I'll go right back to Brandon Cooks. I liked him in some GPPs last week. So the Tennessee Titans secondary is pretty slow. They really can't handle the speed of Watson and Fuller and Cooks in the passing game here. So I think those guys will be making some huge plays here. And if Jordan Akins is out again, then you can look at the other tight end there for Houston.
Fells.
Yeah, Darren Fells. Yeah, you can take a look at him. If Akins is out again, he was in the concussion protocol. Akins was. So yeah, so this is a pretty good game. It's close. It looks like close and competitive and fairly high scoring. So it is a good game that you can get some exposure to here.
Yeah, I like the Houston passing attack. In fact, I like all the Houston skill position players. Tennessee just not great against the numbers and coming in on short rest. You were on Cooks. That was a nice play last week. Really good GPP call that you had. And I like the fact that he got 12 targets. So a good price tag for Cooks. I like his speed against the Titans, like you said. Fuller in play, Cobb in play. He got up to 6 targets. Much more balanced passing attack for Houston under Crennel. So you got to like that. David Johnson in play for me with that strong matchup. We weren't quite sure what would happen with the backfield, but he got 19 touches last week, so he's still in play. And he's almost $2,000 cheaper than Derrick Henry on the Titans side, who, I agree, it's an awesome matchup, but short rest, and they don't really use him in the passing game, and he's so much more expensive that if I'm going to get one running back from this game, it is going to be David Johnson. All right, Shane, game number 4, we come back down to earth with the totals here. We're down at 43 on betus.com.pa as the Washington football team is traveling to play the Giants. Washington 1-4, Giants 0-5. Giants the home favorite here by 2.5. This one looks like a bit of a dud to me, but are you looking to play anyone from this game?
Yeah, it's a bad combination of both defenses have been decent. They've been pretty tough defenses, and both offenses have been really bad.
Exactly.
So that doesn't sound like a good combination here. I think you could look at some of these talented guys like Terry McLaurin, and you never know when he could have a blow-up game. It sounds like he'll probably be shadowed by James Bradbury, which is a fairly tough matchup. But McLaurin's shown that he can win against, shadow against good owners too. So McLaren might have a McCaffrey or DPP play. Antonio Gibson is another guy that I think that should keep getting more and more carries here, and he's really talented, and he's the type of guy that can break a couple big plays too against this Giants defense. So he is a guy that in GPPs you can take a look at as well. Other than that, I'm having a hard time getting to too many New York Giants for exposure here. Don't trust the running game. A little bit hard to trust the passing game. Washington's actually been pretty good in the secondary, limiting production for wide receivers as well. So great. A couple GPP plays on the Washington side here.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad you zeroed in on that same aspect of the blah offenses and the solid defenses, despite those bad records. New York is only averaging 16 points a game on offense. Washington only averaging 17. So I think one thing you could do in a GPP, you could pick out one of these defenses. Because normally you don't look to a 1-4 team or an 0-5 team to play a defense. But with these offenses being so poor, I think you could get low ownership on a defense like New York. If you do want to pick somebody from this game for a GPP, I agree that Gibson would be the guy for Washington, given the amount of touches he's had. But the Giants are okay against the run, so it's not a great matchup. And then Slayton certainly has stepped up here, but he's a little bit banged up with his foot. So just probably won't get any of the skill position players from this game in my lineups.
I like your point about the defenses. Like if Chase Young is playing for Washington, we'll have to check the injury reports, make sure he's playing. But you can see Chase Young and their pass rush getting after Daniel Jones, and he's very turnover prone. So that would be a good spot, like to play the Washington defense at a pretty cheap price here. So yeah, that's a good sneaky defensive play in this game, since we can't get a lot of offensive exposure, or at least we don't want to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, game 5, Shane. Browns against the Steelers. We're back over 50 here with a total of 51 on BetUS. I think that might be a little bit high. I'm curious to see what you think. The Steelers are the 3-point favorites at home. They're undefeated, 4-0. Browns are 4-1, coming off that nice win against the Colts. And latest news here on Thursday is that OBJ is ill. He's home. So we'll have to wait and see on the COVID test for him. That could certainly shake things up with that receiving core. But what do you think about this 51 total? Is this a game that you really want to get a bunch of exposure to, or maybe just a one-off?
No, it does seem like a division AFC North kind of battle here, kind of a defensive battle. These teams know each other well, each other pretty well in terms of the strengths and the defense matchups here. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a great game that would go, to 50. I wouldn't take the over on the 51 here. I think you can take a look at Kareem Hunt just because he still is going to be the bell cow. I talked about last week how they have a great blocking scheme. So even though Pittsburgh is really tough in their defensive front, we did see Miles Sanders kind of get off against them, against, an Eagles running game that's not as good as this Cleveland running game. So it is possible that Kareem Hunt could have a couple big runs and then get it done through the air, as he's a really good pass catching back. So Kareem Hunt's still in play here. I just don't think he's going to make the short list of my top because of a tough matchup here. And then you could take a look at Jarvis Landry. If Odell Beckham isn't going to get much play here, then Jarvis Landry could do a lot of damage over the middle here against Pittsburgh. And if they get down, they're going to have to pass quite a bit. And then on the Pittsburgh side, you could take a look at James Conner. I mean, he is a true bell cow back, but Cleveland's been pretty tough against running backs as well. So it doesn't make it like an ideal breakout spot, but he could certainly break out here. And then I'm curious to see if Deontay Johnson, if he comes back healthy or not. If he can avoid Ward over there on the Cleveland side, like their top corner, then I think he should have a good matchup and do pretty well here. I know everyone's talking about Chase Claypool because he had that huge blow-up game with 4 touchdowns, but Chase Claypool will get on the field more now. I think obviously he's proven himself, but Deontay Johnson's still pretty much their top wide receiver, and then Smith-Schuster's been a little disappointing. He's still going to be, roaming around mostly in the slot too. So I like Deontay Johnson if he plays, because you can get him at super low ownership if he's healthy, because people are not going to be thinking about him because he's been injured, and they had the Claypool blow up here. So those are a few guys that I'll take a look at as the week goes on here and consider. But other than that, not a lot of exposure to this game.
Yeah, for me, I also would look at the Pittsburgh passing attack. If I'm going to get exposure to this game, Cleveland is number 30 against the pass. So you could look at Big Ben here, pair him up with one of those receivers. Excuse me. At this point on Thursday, Juju and Deontay do have questionable marks next to their names. A little bit banged up. Juju with the knee, Deontay with the back. So we'll have to monitor that leading up till Sunday at kickoff. But yeah, Chase Claypool, is still a good price. If either of those guys is out, even if they aren't, I do think he's worth considering. Certainly, sort of overtaking James Washington, and he will be out there on the field a bunch more. So I could look at that passing attack, and then with the Browns, if OBJ is out, certainly Landry an option. He got 9 targets last week, and then Rashard Higgins would be the cheap minimum price guy, only 3,000 on DraftKings last week, caught 3 for 31 and a touchdown. So you should see more targets for him if OBJ is out. All right, Shane, before we transition to the second half of the podcast, I just want to let folks know if they want to jump in with us as members to take advantage of our lineups, we'd love to have you. Just go to dfscoachtalk.com and pick up a weekly membership or monthly. And then actually later tonight, we will be posting our winter special, which is going to be designed for NFL players, and it's going to take you through the Super Bowl with our membership. And with a membership, you get access to all of our sports. So you get our lineups for baseball. We're still in the playoffs, of course, golf. And then this winter special, we'll have the NBA back before the Super Bowl. So you get the back half of that. And what we do is we give out multiple lineups on FanDuel. We give out the full cash lineup, full GPP, and then on DraftKings, we give out our coach's clipboard with highlighted core plays and a bunch of pivots. And we're off to a great start on the Sunday lineups here on the main slate. So Go to dfscoachtalk.com and join us with a membership. We'd love to have you. All right, Shane, second half of the slate here, we're going to look at the Ravens and Eagles matchup. Over under 47.5. Ravens favored by 7.5. 4-1 on the season. The Eagles struggling, but still contending in that NFC East with their 1-3-1 record. Anyone you're looking to play here?
Yeah, it's another kind of tough defensive battle whenever you have Baltimore involved there. I mean, they tend to blow teams out, and they really put it on the Bengals last week and put a hurting on them. So I think that Carson Wentz has been struggling, but he's played a little bit better. He played against a tough Pittsburgh defense and put up some points last week. So they are starting to get a little bit better in Philadelphia in terms of their offensive production. I think you can look at the Baltimore side here. I think Mark Andrews is going to be a pretty popular play. Philadelphia struggles against tight ends, and Mark Andrews is pretty much still their number one receiving target here. So he's in a great spot here since it's not like super easy to run against Philadelphia. They're pretty tough against the run, so Lamar Jackson will have to pass a lot. It's pretty crazy to believe that really you can almost cross off Lamar Jackson. I mean, as a pay up contrarian GPP flyer play here because he's still super expensive and he hasn't really produced that much. He's not really running as much, which I said that in the offseason that I didn't think he was going to run as much, and he's just producing at a minute, at kind of an average rate in the passing game. But Mark Andrews gets so much production. I think he's worth paying up for. You can take a look at Marquis Brown. I'm still waiting for him to have a huge breakout game. He's certainly capable of it. I think he had a good game last week. I did play him in a few lineups, but he just didn't get in the end zone, but he did have a ton of catches. The only problem with Marquis Brown, he's probably going to be shadowed by Darius Slay, who should be able to limit his production. But Slay's getting a little bit older, so it's possible that Marquis Brown might be able to beat him for a couple deep plays there. But yeah, Darius Slay in general is a pretty tough matchup. I think you could take a look at the Baltimore defense as they really did well last week, creating a lot of turnovers against Carson Wentz, who struggled, and against Philadelphia's offensive line that's kind of struggling. And then, Philadelphia side, I really love Miles Sanders. I just don't love the matchup again, kind of like last week, even though Miles Sanders did produce with that long touchdown run, that was probably a little bit fluky. It was impressive, but still a little fluky. So I probably would stay away from Miles Sanders. Probably in the DFS world, that would be more of a flyer GPP play. And I don't think I'm going to go to some of these other receivers that they have, like Travis Fulgham and, Greg Ward. I don't think I'm going to get involved too much with those guys against this Baltimore secondary. So it's pretty much a pretty minimal exposure game here.
Yeah, my first target here would be the Ravens defense. Just looking at Carson Wentz here, he's got 10 turnovers in 5 games. That's 2 per game. Pretty easy math. It's a nice start to your defensive fantasy point output if you go with that and you get that same average here in this game. So I am interested there. And despite the Ravens being big favorites, given the way they spread out the usage, certainly in the backfield, and with some of the price tags, I don't think I'm going to get to any of their skill position players. I understand why you'd be interested in Andrews, but he is the most expensive tight end on the board. So I probably won't invest in him too much. I'll just look at the defense. And then on the other side, before I started digging into the price tags, I wasn't planning on even considering any of these Eagles players. But with Alshon and Deshaun Jackson still questionable, if they're out, I was a little bit surprised at the price tags on Fulgham and Ward. On DraftKings, they're really cheap. They're in the low 4K range. So you could use one of those guys as a one-off. I mean, Fulgham had 10 catches for 152, and you don't need that to pay off 4.4 K price tag on DraftKings. So those guys are still in consideration for me. And with Sanders, I agree. I mean, that touchdown he got, the long touchdown against Pittsburgh, that looked like a flag football game where it was like a walkthrough, and the Steelers were just going through the motions. He just ran down the field as if no one was around and no one was trying to tackle him. So I think that was a fluke. And that reminds me, actually, going back to Kareem Hunt, I don't want to play him against the Steelers because I think it was a fluke for Sanders to get those 2 touchdowns. And, I think Hunt is pretty expensive. So I'm going to continue to shy away from Sanders in this tough matchup, like you said. And I'm ready to go to the next one, Shane.
All
It's
right.
the Bengals and Colts. Another 1 o'clock kickoff. Colts are the home favorite of 8 points, and over under is 46.5 on BetUS. You can really run on the Bengals, Shane. And I know you like how Jonathan Taylor looks. He hasn't gotten a full workload lately, but in this prime matchup, will you get back to some Taylor shares this week?
Yeah, it's probably definitely time to look back at him. I talked about last week. I don't like how they split the carries with him. It's like they're saving him or something. It's like they don't want to give him the ball. He's clearly the most talented back. They got a good offensive line, but I think they could definitely get him some work here, and he might be able to get closer to. I'd like to see him get closer to 18 carries here. And be able to produce big. Still waiting for him to break off one of those long runs. So, yeah, I think Taylor's definitely in play here. He's clearly their red zone and their goal line back as well. So he is in play. He's still really not that cheap considering he hasn't had a blow-up game, but I think he is due to pay off that price tag. And I think you could stack him with the Indianapolis defense. They've been one of the top defenses in the league. Cincinnati showed that they can really turn the ball over and really have a hard time protecting Joe Burrow, even though he's really talented. And Joe Mixon, it's hard for him to get going when he doesn't have much room to run anywhere. In Indianapolis' secondary matches up against the receivers as well. So I like the matchup here for the Indianapolis defense, and you compare him with Jonathan Taylor. And that's really about the extent I'm getting involved with this game as well. I'm not going to try to get too cute and try to play any Cincinnati guys here. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm exactly with you. Yeah, I like Taylor. And on Thursday here, we've got Jordan Wilkins questionable with a calf. So that would be even better for Taylor's ownership. So keep an eye on that. And I'm interested in the Colts defense also. They've only allowed 17.6 points per game and only 280 yards per game. 194 passing, 86 rushing. That is phenomenal. They have had some easy matchups. They've played Jacksonville, Minnesota, and the Jets to start the season, and then the Bears and Cleveland. And Cleveland got them last week, so I don't think they're going to continue with those averages. But I do think it's a good matchup. Indianapolis certainly in play for me as a defense. And then just want to mention on the tight end group, Trey Burton really emerged last week. Got 5 catches on 6 targets, while Jack Doyle only had 2 targets and Mo Alley-Cox only 1. So Burton really stepping up there as the preferred pass catcher. We know that Rivers has had a lot of trouble passing it down the field, getting anything going. So I think he'll rely on his tight end, and Burton is 3.1 on DraftKings. Really nice price there. So he's another guy I would consider from this game. All right, Shane, the next 1 o'clock game, Broncos and Patriots. We are finally going to get this matchup after the COVID delay. So both teams extremely well rested. Broncos haven't played since October 1st, that Thursday night win over the Jets. And the Patriots haven't played since that dud against Kansas City when they lost 26-10 and Cam Newton was out. But now he's back in. Stephon Gilmore's back in. So major upgrade for the Patriots. On the Broncos side, some uncertainty this week with Melvin Gordon and the DUI, but he was back at practice today on Thursday. So it looks like he's probably going to suit up and not have to deal with a suspension this week. Stay tuned on that. Philip Lindsay could become more important here, but assuming Gordon plays, Cam plays, Gilmore plays, are you looking at anyone here from this game?
Another one of those games in the mid 40s, over under, could be a big blowout. New England's favored by 10 points. So It doesn't look like a game that the New England's going to have to really keep scoring much in the second half if they get up big, and Denver isn't really that impressive. And obviously New England can really take away, their top guys. So I think New England can definitely take away the run here and stop Gordon, and really just play press man coverage against the wide receivers for Denver that really aren't that great. So I think New England just matches up against Denver way too good. I think Drew Lock is probably going to come back, and he's a talented, young quarterback, but I think he's gonna make some mistakes against this New England defense. So I think that it's another defense that's probably in play. New England defense at home after a long layoff. and going up against a young quarterback who's just coming back from an injury. So this is probably a good spot the way they match up for them against Denver. I think Julian Edelman definitely gets another upgrade here now that Cam Newton's back. That Cam Newton to Edelman connection has looked really good this year in the limited time they've been together. So I think you can definitely take a look at that. And Denver's secondary isn't kind of what they used to be. So I would probably take a look at Julian Edelman. I don't know if I trust Cam Newton to play him that much, just because I don't think he's going to have to do much really. And then the running backs, I mean, they'll probably use 3 or 4 running backs here.
Or 6 or 7.
Yeah, they'll use several of them. So I know that Damian Harris looks really good, but Denver's pretty stout against the run, so I don't know if he's going to be able to produce at a high average yards per carry, and you just don't know how much production he's going to get here. So I think it's just going to be an ugly, grinded out game. New England will get the lead and just, grind it out pretty much. But I think Edelman, I could see him having a big game here, so that's the main guy I like here.
Yeah, same stuff here on my end. Not going to touch that New England backfield, even though it is a 10-point edge on the line, and they might win easily. I'm more inclined to play the defense. Like you said, I do like that matchup. And then Edelman, the connection with Newton was huge in that game against Seattle. And then Edelman's been a little bit banged up. Newton was out. And so now that they've circled back and they're healthy, I think you could go to Edelman. And then Damiere Byrd is only 3.5K on DraftKings, another cheap guy you could get at low ownership that you might want to consider.
Yeah, he's looked really good. Yeah, he's looked very quick, and he seems like he's always wide open. So,
all right, one more 1:00 kickoff, Shane. It's the Falcons against the Vikings. Hopefully, this one will go forward and everybody stays healthy. 54 is the total on BetUS.com.pa. Vikings are the 4-point home favorites at 1-4 on the season. Falcons 0-5. A lot of turmoil in that organization. And Julio Jones is questionable, not practicing today, so I'm expecting him to be out. So tough situation for the Falcons organization with the change in the front office and the coaching staff. But it's a good matchup, really, for both sides. The Falcons are giving up 32 points a game, and the Vikings are giving up 30 points a game. So are you going to get invested in this potential shootout?
Yeah, this is a game that's definitely good. They're going to Minnesota in the Dome, and 2 teams that, pretty suspect on defense and have talent on offense here. It was looking like, major chalk. I mean, Dalvin Cook's probably going to be out. It was looking like Alexander Mattison week, but DraftKings and FanDuel did an excellent job of actually pricing him up in time. So yes, they have him priced up at, $7,000 to $7,200 range, which is appropriate for his role because he's probably one of the most talented backup running backs in the league here. So that's going to be a big question, whether you want to pay up for Alexander Mattison here. It is a good matchup against Atlanta. They definitely give up a lot of production against running backs. In the passing game, I think Madison can catch some passes. You just don't know if Boone, the other running back, is going to get involved with third downs and catch more passes and take away some of those catches for Madison, because Madison's going to have a pretty big game to pay off that $7,000 to smash that, that $7,000 price tag there. So that's going to be one of the interesting questions. But I think you can also really attack Atlanta through their secondary, through the passing game. So this is a game where Kirk Cousins, they might rely on his passing game a little more. And really Adam Thielen and Jefferson on the outside have huge mismatches against the Atlanta secondary. So I could see them passing more and going to those guys. So I definitely like those guys. And then also on the Minnesota side, Irv Smith Jr., I talked about him kind of earlier in the year, and he's finally starting to get on the field. He's a super freak athlete, tight end, and he's still very low priced. He's $2,500 on DK. So you don't usually get an ascending player like this who has the potential for a touchdown and potentially a couple big plays for $2,500. So Irv Smith is a really nice GPP play here, and he's $4,300 on FanDuel as well. So he's super cheap on both sites there. That allows you to pay up elsewhere. So I do like Irv Smith Jr. here. And then I would take a look at Atlanta side. If you think they're going to be down, I think Matt Ryan can get a ton of production here and have to pass the ball a lot. And you probably would pair him with Calvin Ridley, because that's the only guy you can really trust right now for Atlanta. But he has quite a few different weapons he can throw to. But I think the Matt Ryan to Calvin Ridley matchup here looks pretty good in this way. This game script, if they're down, they should be able to get some nice garbage time production.
Yeah, I'm with you on the breakdown. That Vikings passing attack is in a great spot. It's just that eternal question of will they pass it enough? Because we know that they don't want to pass it. They want to just run it every single down. Yeah. But, they will. They pass it against Seattle. So Cousins is in play. Thielen and Jefferson in play. Great matchups. A little bit expensive. I do really like the value for Irv Smith. 4 for 64 last week. So really trending in the right direction, getting more targets than Rudolph. Awesome price tag. And with Madison, you're right. They did price him up as a potential starter. But he got 23 touches last week in relief, 20 carries, caught 3 balls. We've seen running backs really do well against Atlanta this year, even though their pass defense is awful. And you can beat them through the air or on the ground. Chris Carson got in the end zone multiple times against them. So, Madison, although he's expensive, he's still going to be in consideration for me. And then if Julio is out, yes, you got to figure Ridley will get a bunch of targets. The Vikings are not good against the pass either. So you could pair him up with Matt Ryan. He just hasn't had those ceiling games this year. So I'd be more inclined to go with Cousins or somebody else from a good matchup like Stafford. But Ridley in play, Oz is in play at 3.2. I think he could be low owned, get a bounce back here, and get some better numbers this week after the letdown last week.
Yeah, it'd be a nice contrarian game stack and more GPP large fields to have Matt Ryan and Ridley, and then bring it back with like Jefferson and Thielen or something like that. So I think that's a good spot here to be a little different.
Absolutely. All right. Well, before we get to the 4:00 games, just want to take a minute and hear a word from our partners at BetUS.com.pa.
Wake up, sports bettors. Sports are in high gear at BetUS.com, so put down the beer and make every sporting event more exciting by putting stakes on the line at BetUS. Earn bragging rights over your friends as you rake in the cash from each week's betting action. But don't settle for any other book. Choose America's favorite sports book with over 25 trusted years in the industry, BetUS. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, but more importantly, you need a sports book that pays. BetUS has your game with action on football, baseball, basketball, MMA, golf, horse racing, and even esports. No other sportsbook welcomes newcomers like BetUS with their jaw-dropping sign-up bonuses. Sign up now with promo code CoachTalk for 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,000. The best in the biz. Now you have the best book in the business with the best DFS provider in the business, Coach Talk. Create your account to make point spread bets, futures bets, prop bets, entertainment bets, live bets, and more. No other sportsbook is as committed to their members as BetUS. Sign up now and get in on the winning side of the ball.
Okay, welcome back. Shane, we've got 2 4:00 games to go here. Let's finish with a bang with the Jets and Dolphins. Wait a minute.
All right.
Yeah. 0-5 Jets against the Dolphins, who do have 2 wins. That surprising 43-17 trouncing of San Francisco last week. And they are favored by 10 on BetUS this week, over under 47. How about that news on the Jets side? We've got Flacco in for Darnold. We've got no more Le'Veon Bell. He's been cut. And it's Thursday right now. We don't know where he's going to go. I'm hoping he doesn't go to the Dolphins because I like Myles Gaskin here on one of my season-long teams. But we'll wait and see what Le'Veon Bell comes up with. But, this is just interesting matchup at 4:05 with, it being one of the 2 games left to consider in that late slot. Do you think you'll get anyone from this game?
I was on Jameson Crowder last week, and he certainly didn't disappoint. He had a nice game there, and he was really low owned. I think he was under 5% owned in that fast-paced matchup there against Arizona. He had 10 targets, 8 catches, 116 yards, and a touch. So like Jameson Crowder here, I think you can go right back to him. Miami's super weak in the slot. They don't have anyone that can cover him, and the guy's just super consistent. So I think that especially if they're going to be down big, they're going to have to pass a lot. So I think this is definitely Jameson Crowder, a good Jameson Crowder week, and he's still reasonably priced in that $6,000 range. And then I think you could stack the Miami passing game here with Fitzmagic, and you can pair him up with Devontae Parker, who has a great matchup against Pierre Desir. You can pair him up with Preston Williams, who had a breakout game last week. And then if you want to get really contrarian, you can throw in some Gesicki, even though Gesicki's been super inconsistent. He is basically like a big slot wide receiver. He runs a ton of routes, and he's very talented, and he's a red zone threat. So you could really do a lot of Miami stacks here and then bring back Crowder on the other side. And I like this game that I think it could actually be fairly high scoring. I like the over on this game here. So there's some sneaky good plays here in this matchup that it seems like one of those ones that can get pretty high scoring to me.
Yeah, I like the matchup for Gesicki. He is a little bit expensive. I do like the price tag on some of these cheaper tight ends a little bit better. On the Jets side, you absolutely nailed it with Crowder last week. That was a great call for GPPs. So good matchup for him. But don't forget about Jeff Smith. 11 targets last week with all the guys banged up in that receiving core.
He catch like 3 of those targets.
three for 23 yards, but he's only 3,000 on DraftKings. So add him to the group of guys that, there's a bunch of them here this week in that 3 to 4K range, wide receivers on DraftKings who, can really pay off value. If you're telling me right now that I'm going to get 11 targets again and he's 3,000 against Miami, I'll play him. I'm not in every single lineup, but I'll get him out there. So that'll be interesting. And then with those Jets running backs, we'll see. They're talking about getting more touches for P. Ryan. He's at 4K, but I don't think I really trust anything with the Jets rushing attack because obviously Gore is going to continue to get carries. So I think I'll look at those other spots we've already mentioned. And then maybe save a spot in my lineup or two for this last game because it's a big over-under 55, and it's a pick'em. Awesome quarterback matchup here as the Packers are traveling down to Florida to take on Tom Brady and Tampa Bay. Some back and forth in the media this week with Jamal Williams taking a little shot at Tom Brady with, the 4 fingers up. And it looked to me like he did not realize it was 4th down. And I was a little disappointed with the media for not just, asking that question directly until Tom answered it. He just avoided the question. I think he could have laughed it off and just admitted that he didn't know it was 4th down. Because I don't know how else you could explain holding up 4 fingers and looking at the refs with a quizzical look on your face. But, Jamal Williams stepping up for Aaron Rodgers and saying that his quarterback knows what down it is. So I think Tom Brady is going to be extra motivated here. Really excited to watch this game in prime time, so to speak. But what are your thoughts on this game?
I do like the Tampa Bay offense here. Because Green Bay has to go on the road, and I like the fact, Brady's very motivated. And if he can get Chris Godwin back, which I think Chris Godwin's going to play, I like that matchup in the slot here. Probably a little better than Mike Evans going against Alexander here. So Chris Godwin looks like it being a good spot if he's back healthy, so he could be a sneaky play. I like Tom Brady here, and I like Ronald Jones. I know Leonard Fournette's probably coming back, but if you've watched Ronald Jones, he's looked really good, and his price remains pretty cheap still. And I think if you're going to attack Green Bay, the best thing to do is just run straight at them, because with those 2 defensive ends that they have, the Smith guys there, those guys are ferocious in the pass rush. So if you're going to try to protect Brady, you're gonna have to run straight at those guys and cause some issues for him, because you can't just sit back in the pocket against the Green Bay pass rush there and just pass all day. So they're going to have to run the ball. I love Tampa Bay's running scheme and the run blocking. I've talked about that, and the combination of Ronald Jones looking pretty explosive, pretty powerful here. So I do like Ronald Jones here. I'm not loving a lot on the Green Bay side just because. I think that the thing that's a little confusing to me is this 55 over under. I feel like it's disrespecting these defenses a little bit. I think that Tampa Bay and Green Bay's defense are really good. I know that they have some superstars on the offensive end, but I kind of feel like this is going to be a little lower scoring game. So I kind of taken the under here. I'd love to have a bunch of plays from this game in that 425 late game hammer, but I'm not going to get a ton of exposure to this game because I'm a little skeptical on it being a big shootout here. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle with just a few select plays kind of helping, win the game for each side. But Devontae Adams, I'm not sure, he's not going to match up that good. He's going to be shadowed by the top corner from Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay's corners are big and physical, and they've really limited upside on wide receivers this year. So I don't really love the matchup there. And Tampa Bay's tough against the run as well. So I don't know that I love Aaron Jones in the running attack here. So that's why I'm not a whole lot on the Green Bay side here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this 55 total looks good on paper. The matchup of these great quarterbacks, but I'd rather stack the Falcons and Vikings game than this one. I think it's much more likely to be a shootout. Certainly not going to touch that Packers running game. Devontae, tough matchup, like you said. Darius Shepard would be the cheap guy on that side you could look at for 3,000. But I think I prefer the other cheap wide receivers we've already mentioned a little bit better. So, yeah, nobody really jumping out in terms of their price tag for the Packers. And then on Tampa, a lot of question marks with those wide receivers. If Godwin comes back, he's in play. Evans, tough matchup. And then all those other cheap guys roaming around in the slot. Scotty Miller, who got 0 targets against the Bears. Tyler Johnson, who I thought looked pretty good. He's only 3.4. So we'll have to see the final inactive report. We'll see if Justin Watson is back in the mix. He didn't play against Chicago. So, just if everybody plays, it's going to be tough to zero in on really any of the individual skilled players from this game. Brady, could go with Brady naked at 6.5. Worth considering. But again, I really probably prefer some of the other quarterbacks earlier in the slate. So maybe it'll be a situation where we tune in and look for an entertaining game, but nobody really has any ceiling games, and they don't interfere with hopefully our high point totals that we've already gathered up with the 1 o'clock games.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like, if this is a grinded out type game, I like the Ronald Jones play here because he's still pretty cheap. And, if he can get in the end zone again, I think, he just seems like he's just always ready to break off a big play. He's got a lot of speed, and he's added some power this year as well. And I like their blocking scheme. And I think you can run against Green Bay. So we're on the other side. It's pretty tough to run against Tampa Bay, though. So excellent.
Well, great work here this week, Shane. Make sure to tune in with us on Saturday night. We'll have our next final preview of the main slate, position by position, and then we're going to have our primetime show where we dissect those 3 games, 1 on Sunday night, 2 on Monday night. Of course, there's a huge contest this week, the Monday Night Millionaire on Draftkings, with that rare 2-game Monday night slate. So tune in to both of those shows with us. And then follow us on social media on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk. Like I said, you can find Shane at DET Sports Shane. Check in with me at Language Olympic. And then if you want to talk to our fearless leader, the coach, you can follow him at JOESARVADI. We love interacting with folks on Twitter or on YouTube. Feel free to leave a comment there, a question, what have you. DFS_Coach Talk on Instagram. Shane runs that side of things for us. And then our charity of choice here, mambaon3.org, MAMBAONTHREE. And I want to thank our presenting sponsor here one more time, betus.com.pa. Please use that promo code Coach Talk. Get that 125% match with your first deposit. Shane, any final words of wisdom?
No, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and get ready for some Week 6 action. We're ready to have a huge week here again. We're really excited to. We're going to provide full lineups on. We've done really well on Yahoo. FanDuel full lineups, Yahoo full lineups, and awesome player advice, narrowing it down on DK. So definitely join us. Go to dfscoachtalk.com, and we appreciate the support on YouTube with all the comments and the likes and subscribes.
Absolutely. Thank you for all your support on YouTube. And on behalf of Shane Caldwell and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hansen. That's it for today. Be sure to tune in again next time as we look to crush it in DFS.